chart. It was this Dr. Jelinek chart, and it was like a horseshoe, and it went like this and back up. And that was to show that, you know, when we're born, we're like pure, we're little babies. And then, you know, we start living and we start drinking and we go down the horseshoe, and then we hit bottom, and then we get sober, and then we climb up the other side of the horseshoe. And there's also that saying, I want to put it, you know, my mind is a trick for me. So I'll say this while I've got it. I heard once in a meeting that you stop growing, that we stop growing emotionally when we start drinking. So I already told you when I started drinking, so you can imagine what a child man I am now. But in any event, uh, unbeknownst, I grew up in Europe, and in Europe they would give children wine cut back with water for the evening meal. And you know, aren't we European, and ain't I alcoholic? And nobody knew that they lit the match. And here I am, and I'm already on the train. I'm on this train that broke my heart and my body for 27 years, 22 years. And so I started stealing liquor from my parents' cabinet. And my parents were very, very interested in social climbing. I had two brothers, one 7 years older than me, one 5 years older than me, and a cousin that was 4 years older than me. And the result was that I had to raise myself, and I will tell you right now, I did a terrible job. And that alcohol, you know, and I can't say that I was a problem drinker because I was a baby. I mean, who has problems at 5 years old, right? But I would drink what they call in the military the dead soldiers. So they'd have a party, and then there'd be, you know, the drinks would be left around the house still. And we got a cigarette butt over here in this one, and we got that. And Mickey will go over there and drink these things because they have alcohol in them. And now we're going to get to a heart of another matter, and that is I was kicked out of every school I ever went to until I got to high school. And I remember this, I found my second grade report card. We were in Frankfurt, Germany. But anyway, my report card, it was like practically all A's until you flip the report card over and it said, Mickey is a discipline problem. Does that have any resonance in our book? Mickey is a discipline problem. And I couldn't behave. I could not behave. And when I got into, we came to America and when I was 9 years old, and I couldn't believe it. This is an aside, I got hold of the New York Herald Tribune newspaper before we came, and it said gang wars in New York. And I told my parents, I don't want to go to America. I don't want to go to America. And we got in a ship in Naples, Italy, and we came across the big pond. And I couldn't believe it when we came into New York Harbor. I looked up at this statue and I went, oh my God, this is America. I'm in America. And the two things that impressed me the most about America were television, which I had never seen, and 7-Up. I thought 7-Up was from God. I mean, seriously. And the television I saw the first time was my father ran out and got one real quick, and we put it up and we turned it on. It was when Elvis Presley appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show, and they would only shoot him from the waist up because he gyrated. And I guess the women were all going to go, I don't know what was going to happen there, but we're in America now. My father was the head of Air Force intelligence in Europe. He was a big deal. I mean, he was a big deal. My parents would throw a party and, you know, what's his name of Alamein? Who's that famous British general? I can't remember his first name.
Montgomery.
Montgomery of Alamein would be downstairs in the party. I learned to bend over and kiss women's hands, and I bowed, and it was like, what? So I just wanted to tell you, there's a great diversity in Alcoholics Anonymous. We're not all like coming out of whatever circumstances, but they're all bad because they're alcoholic. And so here I am, and when they knocked after we had left our duty station here in Denver, that was my father's last one in 1960, they knocked down the garage. And when they knocked it down, they found that all the walls of the garage were full of empty beer cans. And who did that? I mean, right? Who put those beer cans in there? So it ended up, I mean, I would stand outside of a bar. We moved to Rapid City, South Dakota. Oh my God. Anyway, and I would stand outside the bar and I would wait for an airman to come up and I'd give him money to buy me alcohol. And I'll give you my last one. And that was I went to Catholic schools. And the last Catholic school was in South Dakota. And I'd grown up in Europe, as I told you, and it came time for show and tell. Now, this is offensive, so just hang on. It came time for show and tell. Now, we're all going to do show and tell. And when I was a kid, you could go to the flea market in Paris, and now I don't know what you get in flea markets, use this or a record or whatever. I saw pictures of people on Fifth Avenue, New York, in the garment district, and they'd be running down the garment district, and they'd have all the clothes hanging on the hanger. Well, picture all of them as Nazi uniforms. All of them were Nazi uniforms. It turns out they didn't need them anymore, and they were all in the flea market. And I'm buying that, and I'm buying the daggers, and I'm buying the swords, and I'm buying the medals, and it's time for show and tell in a Catholic grade school in Rapid City, South Dakota. And so I said I wanted to bring these things, and they said no. Now, for me, no was a challenge. And so what happened was, one night I crawled up on the school windows and I put swastikas as big as you can imagine in every window of a Catholic grade school. Now, I have to add a little, and we're talking step one here. So, but in any event, I came to that school as a complete stranger, and they elected me the class president. So here's the class president putting swastikas in. The nurses used to have these bottles that had white polish in them, and that way they could keep their shoes clean and nice and shiny and white. So I used that to do it. And my buddy, my comrade in all this, was called out of class and by the principal, and she gave him a talking to, and he didn't come back. And I knew the jig was up, man. I'm screwed. So she calls me out, and the first thing I said is, I didn't do it. She says, you didn't do what? And I said, I didn't put swastikas and all that. Well, anyway, that was over. They should have handcuffed me, but they didn't. She called him out to ask him, why were you leaving the school grounds at lunch? And she wanted to know from me, why was I joining him? And so in Rapid City, South Dakota, in the 8th grade, you graduate from the 8th grade, and the girls get pretty dresses, and the guys wear, like a white shirt and khaki pants, and you go to a dance. And I stood across the street in a plastic motorcycle jacket, smoking, cigarettes and drinking Grain Belt beer, and the hell with you. And I found this book, and it was a biography of Napoleon. And I read the book. This is in the 8th grade. And I said, my God, this is it. I'm a genius. They just don't understand me. I could start crying right now for that kid. I was so lost. I didn't know which way was up. And when I got kicked out of school that year, I went home and drank half a bottle of cream de menthe. It was the only alcohol I could find. And I've never had any since. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is, I am addicted to a non-addictive substance. We could debate that one into forever. But 9 out of 10 people can more or less tolerate alcohol, right? I mean, we may have the heavy drinker, but given sufficient cause, he can stop drinking or she can stop drinking. But an alcoholic can't stop drinking. I can't stop drinking. And it took me a long time to realize, while I thought I was being cool, I was entrapped. I couldn't stop it. And it's like if you were allergic to goldenrod, and a normal person would walk by that field of goldenrod and they would just keep walking. The person who's addicted to goldenrod would walk there and go right in the middle and bury their face in the middle of it. It's a weird kind of allergy, you know what I mean? And I buried myself in alcohol. And I got sober at 27 years old. I got sober, and being sober for me, now I married this wonderful woman, and on New Year's Eve, we will be married for 50 years. And that's by the grace of a God, right? It turns out God better be not only kind, but powerful, because here I am married to this lady, and she doesn't know anything about alcoholism and whatever. So 3 years into our marriage, I got sober, and I had a little baby daughter. We had a baby daughter 3 years old. When I got sober, I heard people talking about the pink cloud. They had this pink cloud that just felt wonderful, and they had this whole thing going on, you know what I mean? And for me, it was like I was a fish out of water. Just imagine catching a trout, pulling it out of the water and throwing it onto the sidewalk. And that is exactly how I felt getting sober. Now, I ran out of gas. Why did I get sober? I woke up one morning and sat up in bed and I said, God, I can't stop drinking. After this lifetime, I can't stop drinking. And I went like a week without a drink. Now, and I have to tell you, the conversations my wife and I were having before this discovery, we were sitting calmly talking about what nut house could we put Mickey in, because I was coming unwrapped. She disagreed with me one day, and I was standing halfway up the stairs, and I'm not a big person. And she disagreed with me, and I wasn't drunk, and I just silently rocked the entire banister off the stairs because I was going nuts. I was going to see therapists from Denver General Hospital satellite offices. And why was I doing that? Because it didn't cost anything, and I was coming unglued. So I met with this therapist, and we talked a little bit. We never talked about drinking, P.S. And so I'm in there for 3 visits, and I'm quick. I can't sit in a chair, man. I'm moving. I'm a man in motion here. And I said to the therapist, I said, well, how am I doing? I got 3 visits under my belt. How am I doing? And she looked at me and she said, Mickey, you're the most negative human being I have ever met in my life. I don't see how it's possible for you to be walking around the streets out there. Whoops, our time's up. It's that 50-minute hour. Time's up. I'll see you in a week. And I'm going, Jesus, Lord, a week? A week? Can't you give me some? Well, she did. She gave me Valium. And so I can fix my hangovers with Valium and liquor. So we got that out of the deal. If it seems like I'm joking about this, I guess I am in a way. Because when you get trapped that hard, really what you should sit down, yea, though we sat down by the gates of Babylon and wept, because I was really, really in trouble. And so some men came over that night. Marie was out at a pottery class, and I I just needed help. And I called Alcoholics Anonymous because I'd gone to priests, I'd run to priests, I'd run to the therapist, I've done all this stuff, and the fuse is lit, and I'm in trouble. And so I called you because you had alcohol in your name. I had no conception what Alcoholics Anonymous was, or really what alcoholism was. And I called them. Marie's out at this pottery class, and she comes home right before these guys said, "Can you come down?" I said, "I'm babysitting my daughter. I can't." And they said, "Well, we'll send some men to talk with you." So now I know these men are coming, and I'm worried about two things. One, I got to get the house looking straight so they don't think I'm a drunk. And the other one is like they're going to show up with a big red sweater with an A on it that says, that they're from Alcoholics Anonymous. And what are the neighbors going to think? Somewhere in this picture, am I reaching you as an alcoholic? I mean, can I see a thumbs up anywhere? Does any of this sound alcoholic to you? So, we're about to launch here. And so they get to the door. Marie shows up right before them. And I said, "Marie, I've called Alcoholics Anonymous." And she said, "Should I stay?" And I said, "I don't know, because you don't know anything about your first, your 12th step." And I said, "Well, ask them." So I got the door open and I said, "My wife is not alcoholic. Is it okay if she stays?" And the guy looks at my wife, the lead guy, and he said, "Can you be honest?" And she said, "Yes." And I vouched for her. Anyway, and she said, "The first thing I want you to know is you are just as sick as he is." And our 12 steps started there. And thank you, God, right? Thank you, God. My wife was so isolated and alone. She was isolated because she lived with a wackadoodle alcoholic, practicing alcoholic. And she wanted to make contact with people. So she was babysitting for this woman who had to work. So she had that woman's little child. And it turns out that this woman was married to a guy that we used to call Mad Mike. He was my Doberman. If I went into a bar to drink, I had Mike with me. If you look crosswise at me, I would sick Mike on you. And it was like really a great symbiotic deal we had going on. So anyway, she starts talking about this organization called Al-Anon. And my wife says, "What is that?" And she says, "It's for people who are, in relationship with or love an alcoholic so they can get help." And Marie was confounded. She said, "Oh my God, where do I find an alcoholic? I don't know if we have any in our family." And you know what I mean? And she's got exhibit A that she's been living with for 3 years. And it finally came around that she understood, and she was overjoyed. Now, I want to give you a statement, two statements that Marie made. One of them was, shoot, I'm 73 years old, and part of my life is over here, apparently. Gosh almighty. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Mickey, it's not when you drink that I can't stand you. It's when you don't drink. Thumbs up on anyone? Thumbs up, please. We're talking about a disease. This is the disease of alcoholism, you know? And it turns out it ain't in the bottle. I mean, really, if we can only agree on one thing this morning, please, God, can we agree on it is not in the bottle. And ethyl alcohol does not cause alcoholism. I'll go on record with that one, okay? I'll stand by it. And the other one, gosh almighty. Okay, so I'm coming in, I'm maybe 6 months sober. And I've been to these AA meetings. Now Marie's going to Al-Anon, and she's learning about some things, So my wife is not an absolute dream housekeeper. You know what I mean? She just doesn't care about that kind of stuff very much. So, and I would, I love her. She'll get me for it, but I'm with you guys. So anyway, so so I come home one day and I said, "Marie, your poor housekeeping is threatening my sobriety, and I'm going to have to leave." Apparently, you get brilliant immediately that you give up alcohol. And I gave her that line, and she stood there and she faced out the window with her back to me, and she just lowered her shoulders. And now she's going to use Al-Anon on me. And she turned around and she said, Mickey, I'm really sorry you have to leave. What happened to my fight? What the hell is this? Anyway, so you can see now, we've both been in our fellowships for 46 years by the grace of God. And Marie has taught me and many other alcoholics what it means to be in relationship with an alcoholic. So I'm going along. I'm suicidal. I'm suicidal. I have heard this comment so many times. I got sober in 1974. I've heard this comment so many times that I was turning homicidal. Kid, I spilled more booze on my tie than you ever drank. So we know that human beings are competitive, no? And we're competitive. So it's like, I'm more spiritual than you are. I, drank more than you ever drank. And it's like, who cares? I'm dying. And I'm so suicidal. I've got a loaded 32 automatic pistol in my top drawer of the dresser. And it's like this. If Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't work, I'm putting my brains on the wall. And Marie knew about the gun. And so I'm going to these meetings and I'm sitting and I'm listening and I'm thinking, now incidentally, I've slipped this one in. Gosh, time goes so quickly. I didn't know Alcoholics Anonymous was spiritual. And I walked in here and I thought, oh my God, these people are talking about God. What do they want to do? Cure me with fairy tales? I am screwed. I better buku quick become not alcoholic. So I told my sponsor I was, with this whole group sitting in a Mexican restaurant. And I said, boys, I figured it out. I'm not alcoholic. And the head thug looked at me and he said, really? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, Mickey, there's a bar on the other side of this restaurant. Come on over. I'll buy you a drink. And it was like my butt was riveted to the chair. And I said, I can't do that. And he said, why? I said, if I take that drink, I'll go to hell. And then I started with Alcoholics Anonymous. But anyway, what I'm about to tell you is like a 40-year crusade I have had in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm not trying to dismiss anyone. We're all God's children. We're all alcoholic. We all are entitled to life and all of that. For 40 years, I've gotten up and said, alcoholism is a disease that does not exist in the bottle. If it existed in the bottle, everybody who drank the damn thing would be having the experience that we talk about unendingly. So what's going to touch my alcoholism? Because when I got sober, if you started to talk about your feelings in an AA meeting, they called it psychobabble and they will quickly shut you up. So I'm going like, I'm dying here, folks, I'm dying. And now there was a group that was very, very, very tough, and they called it tough love, and it was abusive. It was a nightmare. But they were very precise, so I learned precision. I can work that big book right down to the T. And I needed a sponsor. I got sober at 1311 York Street in Denver. Some of us call it the Mother House. And I mean, it's a 3-story Victorian mansion that saved so many lives. Oh, I can't even count them. Anyway, I needed a sponsor. And I looked at this group because then that was really the connection I had. And there was this short guy with a burr haircut. And I looked at him and I thought, I could steamroller this guy. So I asked him to be my sponsor. Now, don't freak out here. It turns out that George was gay, and he had just come back from 3 tours in Vietnam as a Navy medic attached to the Marines. He's one of the toughest men I ever met in my life. And this is who I got for my sponsor. Now, is there something wrong with being gay? Listen, this is not what we're here to talk about, but I will tell you my reaction to what happened to this deal. I'm desperate. I'm dying. I'm dying. And I go over to George's place. Now, George has had all he wants of war. And so he is now studying to be a Methodist minister. So he's over there, and I go see him at my lunch hour, and we talk. And he had a picture on his back of his door of him way, way, way big, very, very heavy. And he wasn't heavy anymore. And he had lost 100 pounds in Weight Watchers. So I would go over there, and George would give me Weight Watchers ice cream and cookies while we talked. Now, I was 6'3", and I weighed 145 pounds. I looked like an antenna. I looked like a xylophone if I took my shirt off. And he's giving me Weight Watchers ice cream and cookies. And he said, "It's okay, Mickey, because it has vitamins in it." Well, anyway, I hope this is doing you guys any good. This is like falling off a 14-story building. I will hit. Anyway, so we're going along, and I'm nuts, and I'm doubting my masculinity. What a deal. Oh my God, I get a gay sponsor, and I'm having problems with my masculinity. Who can figure this out? And I asked George, I said, "Can you be gay and not know it, George?" And he said yes. And I heard the gates of hell clack shut on me. And I thought, shit, it's true. Now, let me tell you why I thought I was gay. You couldn't meet anybody who was more naive than me, honest to God. So here's what I thought gay was. I thought gay, I'm very, very sensitive. I'm very, very sensitive, okay? And I have no need to ever hit another human being. I can't imagine ever hitting anyone, ever. And I'm very intuitive, and I'm gay. So what's gay? Gay means sissy. You're not a man. And I just told you this guy's 3 tours in Vietnam with the Marines, caring for these poor guys as they're suffering and dying. So I had a lot to learn, and I kept insisting on it. Now, am I out of time now? No? I have like till 10, quarter after. Do I have till quarter after? Hello? Okay, good. No, I don't have till quarter after. Do I have till quarter of? Till 10, I don't know. Somebody help me.
I say keep going. You're amazing.
I know, but am I out of time right now?
Hey, no, you're not. You're good till the top of the hour.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for your help. Okay. So we're going along, and I said, "George, I'm gay." And he said, "Mickey, you're not gay." And this conversation bounced back and forth like a ping pong match. And finally, George looks at me one day and he said, "Mickey, I'm going to hold a picture in your imagination up in front of you of a naked man and a naked woman. Which one would you choose?" And I'm going, "What the hell is he talking about?" I said, "I picked a woman." "Mickey, you're not gay." So that one was, thank you, Lord. And we're off and running, and I have 3 kids, and I, 50 years married, and I can put that one aside. It's okay to be intuitive and soft in your emotions and be a real man. You don't have to be Sergeant Rock or Machine Gun Mike. So we're just, what the hell? What's this guy talking about? Well, anyway, so we're going through. And I went over to George's one day. It wasn't far from where I worked. And it was lunchtime, and I kind of stormed in. This is my cheese sandwich story. So I go in there to George's place, and he's doing whatever his studies are. And I said, "George, we really, really need to talk." And I told him what was going on. I was cheating on my wife. I was so angry that nobody wanted to work with me in my business, in the business, and I wanted to kill myself. And now George has heard this many times. These are not the droids. Well, anyway, he had heard that many, many times. And he looked at me and he said, and I'm eating my cheese sandwich, And he says, Mickey, when I got where you are, I got down on my knees and I asked God for help. And he stood up and he said, and you can use my apartment. And he left. Now I got a half a cheese sandwich and I'm sitting there by myself and I am coming unwrapped. And George said he got down on his knees. And so I got down on my knees. And I got down on my knees and I realized I had no God. And the only prayer I could come up with was, somebody, please help me. And I went back to work. And I was back at work for about an hour. And I got on the phone and I called George and I said, George, I want to ask you one question. And he said, what's that question? I said, do I think the things I think and do the things I do because I'm alcoholic? And he said, yes. And I said, can I recover from this? And he said, yes. And I came up about this high off the sidewalk. And I couldn't believe it. I was about that time 27 years old, out of my mind, suicidal. And somebody just told me that this devil that had been chasing me my entire life could be cured, could be mitigated. I could have a life. Well, I went back to 1311 York Street and I grabbed everybody I could get my hands on. And I told, alcoholism is a disease and we can recover from it. And I'm going around and I'm grabbing them by the lapels and I'm like, they all know. And I'm the only one who doesn't. And my friend Molly came out to go to work and she walked down the stairs and she was heading over 2 or 3 blocks to get on a bus and go to work. Well, I wanted to make sure she understood alcoholism is a disease and we can recover from it. And so I walked her down to the bus. I got on the bus. I went downtown. God, it's a miracle she didn't kill me right on the spot. Alcoholism is a disease and we can recover from it. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol. If alcohol runs you and you don't run it, we're probably alcoholic, the book. I mean, it's not rocket science at this point, right? And we admitted means, it's like the old movie tickets for those who remember. They had a movie ticket and they pull it off a strip and what did it say on it? Admit one. What does it mean? It means to let them in. So we admit it means we let it in. This is the way it is. We could all wear the shirt, reality bites, right? Because we don't want to live in reality. We want to have our reality. This is going to be my planet. Well, anyway, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, which means powerless. There's no wiggle room in it that I'm aware of. That our lives have become unmanageable. Doesn't mean unmanageable while I'm drinking. And it doesn't mean if I work these steps, it's going to continue, that I will have a manageable life by me. What's happening is we're being drawn in to a surrender to the God of the universe. This is about special people being specially commissioned to do special work on this planet. We are special. We are specially blessed if we live. And, I'll tell you this, it's like I sponsor people all over the country, and I'm very blessed in that. And here was my prayer. I have to tell you about my prayer. This is about 10 or 11 years ago. I said, God, you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to start speaking on the West Coast. I like California, and I would like to be on the West Coast speaking. I got 9 years on the East Coast. Anyway, so when we surrender to God, it's going his way. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not like, oh, good, now all my plans and my deepest desires are going to be satisfied. If you've ever heard of the dark night of the soul, the dark night of the soul, I lived in it for 30 years. That's what I got. 30 years in the desert. 30 years in the desert. Why? Well, we'll have to take that up with God when I get a chance, if I do, to meet him. But what happened in that is, in many cases, anybody could sit down with me and say, Mickey, you don't understand. And I can say, actually, I do. I have a black belt in shit I wish I didn't know. Pardon my French. It's for my Irish friend and my Scottish friend. Just teasing. Don't shoot, please. So we are a family. We are a family. And I'm so proud we have a Scot and an Irishman in the house. And excuse me, Scottish lady, a lady. So it's an all day sucker. You know what I mean? If you got alcoholism, you got it all day sucker. It doesn't let up. It's out in the parking lot. We know that, doing push-ups. And every piece of my day needs to have God in it. And I'm slowly learning that I'm a cowboy boot maker. That's what I do for a living. And so before I touch those boots, I put my head down on the workbench and I say, God, please bring beauty and harmony to these boots. You are beauty and harmony. You know what I'm saying? Because without that, I can make the worst boots you've ever seen. And if I let go of God's hand, I revert back into the animal sometimes that I used to be. I had a terrible temper. I have separation anxiety, guys. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just holding on to you. I'm just holding on to you because we've got this moment. St. Vincent de Paul said, I shall pass this way but once. Let any good I can do for any man be done now, for I shall not pass this way again. So we touch each other's lives, huh? And what we're really doing is we are saying we're being reaffirmed. Aren't we being reaffirmed? Oh, and for Edinburgh in the United Kingdom. Well, that's in Scotland. Okay, so we'll count you in as well. I told you I spoke for 40 years on this disease being not in the bottle. It would be so nice, and I'll tell you the repercussions of not having that is we can sit in our meetings, and here's what we say, here's my story. I drank a whole bunch, and then we have our drink-along. And then I found Alcoholics Anonymous, and now I don't drink, and I'm sober, and I'm home. Is that true? Do you think you're really home? I mean, how many people think you're home if you just take the bottle out of your life? So now I stopped drinking and I ran into Mickey. Now I understood why I got kicked out of all those schools. Hell, I couldn't handle him either. And so selfishness and self-centeredness, that is the root of our troubles, driven by 100 forms of fear. And I can't quote the rest of it. Do you know what I'm saying? So if I don't have a hidden ally for this hidden enemy, I'm going to die. 25 years sober, I laid down with a knife at my wrist to take my life. And I laid on that floor for 4 hours. And I said, I'm going to cut my wrist now. Okay, I'll do it 5 minutes from now. And I went to hell. If you think of hell as the absence of God, it was the blackest place I ever went in my life. And I'm going to give you a gift here really quickly. And the reason I was doing it is I'd been like 15 years or so, really not with a sponsor. I mean, I would confer with my fellow wizards, you know what I mean? And we'd just talk a little bit, and weren't we elite and wasn't I dying? And finally it caught up with me. And I had no money. I had a telephone that didn't ring in my business. I had, I had no business at all. And I just sat there. And finally, I got to me. And I just slithered down out of my chair onto this wonderful carpet, which was made out of like artificial turf. It was horrible. And I did not take my life. By the grace of God, Marie did not know where I was. I just couldn't take it another minute. And I thought about how cold I would be when the shock came in. And I didn't do it. And I had met this lady in Minneapolis, and she knew about this deep breather in AA over in St. Paul. And I wanted to get in touch with him so he could save my life. And so she's talking to me, and I told her what was going on. And she gets all of her books out in her lap, and she starts 12-stepping me, thank God. Anyway, there were only two things that I would say as I was going down in my spiral. I can't breathe, and can I please have a cookie? I just wanted something sweet. It was so hard. And so I'm going down, and I call this lady, and she's got her books out, and she's reading to me, and I think to myself, God, she has everything I want. And I asked her, would you be my sponsor? And she said, no, it's women with women and men with men. And I said, please, would you be my sponsor? She says, I tell you what, Mickey, I will sponsor you until you can find a man that fits, okay? And she kept reading to me, and she saved my life, and her name was Cookie. God, can I please have a cookie? Now, this is my gift. I could not hear alcoholics' voices. I could only hear Vietnam veterans' voices. Both my brothers served in Vietnam. I had bad knees, and so I couldn't go. So I had survivor's guilt for not having fought in the war. But in any event, they have these books, these things where they have these jam sessions together and they talk. And I could hear their voices because I knew they'd been out where the wild things are. And I was certainly out where the wild things are. And so one of the pages I turned to, there was this ink drawing of a Victorian grandmother. So she has the big flouncy hat, and all the garb that Victorian woman would wear down to her waist. And underneath it, it said, there's also a Spanish dancer in this picture. So I'm looking at this lady. I'm staring at this lady. I now and then I hold it up to the light. Will the light show it to me? No, I turned the page and I didn't see any Spanish dancer, and I threw that book across the room. And the next morning I came into work and I picked up the book and opened the page, and I'm looking at a Spanish dancer. Now, so what? What this picture's for is for these men who want to kill themselves because all other options have been eliminated and they don't think there's another perspective. There's always a Spanish dancer. Please, no matter what happens in your life, there's always a Spanish dancer. Thank you so much for having me here. I love you from the bottom of my heart.